average, 17 New Zealanders will have a stroke today, and 6 of them will die. Mary Brown was a badminton player and an Irish dancing teacher. At 51, she was starting to travel, and then she had a massive stroke. David Herc's memory was like a computer with a super hard drive. Now, it's an effort to retain information. Mike Brown was in a high-powered meeting when a blood vessel in his brain burst. It was a stroke. Lee Wakefield was a detective and barely 40. She was confident and self-assured. Every year, nearly 6,500 New Zealanders will have a stroke. They're devastating. Depending on the part of the brain affected, they'll cause physical, emotional, and intellectual changes, long-term or short-term disability. Research into stroke is rapidly advancing, with scientists looking for both causes and cures. But what they already know is that we could prevent 85% of strokes.
They have started calling these brain attacks. And that's to emphasise the importance of, this is a serious thing. Most people don't know what a stroke is. As I said, only about a third of people can name symptoms of a stroke. And it's the usual suspects: high blood pressure, not enough exercise, high cholesterol, diabetes, smoking.
10 years ago, my dad had his stroke. I see how it affects him physically and emotionally, but I still don't really know what it means to have a stroke. Auckland University has a brain bank with tissue from more than 400 brains. Neuroscientists are gradually uncovering the secrets of the brain. A stroke is caused by one of two things: a bleed within the brain or a blood clot. The brains stored here give us a clear idea of what can happen. Neuroscientist Alan Barber is ranked one of the world's experts on stroke.
Here we have some stroke-affected brains, and this is a normal-looking brain?
That's a normal, or it was a normal brain. And it's been
He's researching ways to limit the impact of a stroke, but he's equally passionate about educating others of the risks.
The brain needs to get blood, okay? To get blood from the heart up to the brain, you've got arteries, and you've got 2 big arteries here and here. These are the carotid arteries, and you've got a couple of arteries that come up the back. This is one of the ones that comes up the back. You can see it. It's pretty difficult to see. See that there? And then that comes up here, and you can see little ones branching off. Now, each time an artery, or the hose, branches into 2, it gets smaller.
Those tiny arteries can stop receiving blood if fat blocks the line. And that's why you need to keep your cholesterol low.
The part of the brain that's affected by that loss of blood flow stops working, and it stops working within a couple of minutes. That part of the brain will die. So that's that sort of stroke. That's about 85% of strokes. That's called an ischemic stroke.
It's what happened to Mary Brown 11 years ago. One of the cruelest aspects of stroke is that it can deprive many of speech. It's called aphasia.
You found your own way to communicate without words, with lots of photos and...
Or, yeah, sometimes.
So you write things down for people?
No, because... nothing. No. And speak and sometimes laugh. Because sick and tired of...
Mary's stroke was massive. She has a small collection of words, but she never quite knows on any one day what thoughts she'll be able to organise into speech. That's just part of the random nature of stroke.
Now is the hour when we must say goodbye. Soon you'll be...
It's amazing to me that Mary can sing, yet she can't speak. But doctors can explain why.
The music part of the brain is in a slightly different area, and so that's why she can express herself through song, but she can't necessarily express herself through spoken language. It's the same with writing. Some people, when they have an aphasia, can't write, but some people can still express themselves by writing.
What were you doing when you had your stroke? You were sitting at a table and you were playing
Bang. Yes.
poker.
Yes. And just bang.
What's the next thing you remember? Was it waking up in hospital?
Yes. And every time pills and nothing. And slowly, because nothing.
So you slowly became independent and now
Yes.
you live here on
And
your own?
yes, no, nothing. Me and me and me. Carry on, why through.
Much of Mary's former life is gone, but she's had the courage since her stroke to put herself out there and build a new life. Because she can sing, she's joined a choir. Mary knows she was lucky to survive her stroke. 1/3 are fatal. Soon after her stroke, Mary managed to return home and live independently. When she first had her stroke, her right side was completely paralysed. She couldn't so much as roll over, and she had no speech.
Hello, how are you?
Her right arm is still paralysed, but Mary's learnt ways to manage.
Bye. Hello? Oh, hello. How are you?
Mary's brother and sister call by every week. She's also supported by volunteers from the Stroke Foundation.
Nothings. Nice day.
Yes, beautiful day.
Now, I was going to ask you whether your nails needed doing, Mary, because I have brought my clippers if you need them. Oh, they're not too bad, are they?
Yeah.
I'll do them on the weekend for
Okay, right.
you. Okay, folks, I'll make you a cup of tea.
All right, I've got some papers for you to sign from Diane.
Okay, right.
I come and see her every week and we talk about her bills and the money. She's a sister, first and foremost, and to me it's just normal. She's a sister who's had a stroke, but she's got the same character and personality, so it's just being part of a family.
Actually, I see more of Mary now than I did before, because before she was busy and I was busy, and now that Mary is in need of more help, we need to be around there for her.
Everyday tasks are much more of an effort than they used to be. Yet Mary accepts where life's at. How do you cope with life's frustrations?
Well, sometimes, but no, I'm sorry. Okay, so what? So what? I'm going to... it's fine. Nothing, because, no. I'm going to laugh.
Our brains are a mysterious and complex filing system. Memory is kind of like a book, and after a stroke, sometimes the chapters are missing.
I used to pride myself on having a fairly honed computer for a brain. I was always an appalling note taker, very seldom took notes. It was just all in here. I've been a journalist, and so I've written for magazines and websites. So yeah, so I was an information person. Quick absorb, process it, spit it out.
David was 53 years old when he had his stroke. He knew nothing about the symptoms. At first, he ignored the signs that something was wrong.
I couldn't sit upright. You know, like I got on the bed, but my centre of balance, I sort of couldn't find it. And so what I was doing was, you know, I'd try and sit up and I'd fall over. And then I'd try and sit up again and I'd fall over. I don't know how long I was doing that for. I know it was quite some time. And I was doing all these sort of weird things like concentrating on gravity and my centre of balance and stuff like this, and trying to actually get my centre of balance right, while totally ignoring the fact that this really weird thing is actually happening to me. What is happening is that a blood vessel is actually bursting in your brain, and it's letting blood out. And so what happened was I sort of got the first inkling of, oh, this headache is a bit more severe than I thought. There's something really going on here. All of a sudden, what appears to be a minor headache or a minor hangover just ramps up to stadium volume. It was just like unbelievable. It was really, really painful. Then it was a period of a week in intensive care where you are cradled in medical science, really. It's, you know, it's all warm and fuzzy. You are actually, you know, rocked on medical technology. You don't know how fast the human body will recover. So you're stuck there in this place that's not like it used to be. But you don't know that you're ever going to recover from it. And it can be a very dark and unpleasant place. Then what happens is the human body does its little marvellous things. You actually start this process of recovery where things do start coming back. Bit by bit, you regain bits and pieces and you relearn how to use them. One of the things that I found recently was a notebook that I kept when, or tried to keep. Yeah, I'd always prided myself on my handwriting, so it's sort of quite nice that I can look at this person who can't really write. In fact, you can't read quite a bit of it. And then you go from that to my sort of nice, neat, anal handwriting again. So it's sort of like, you can see a whole progress there, but I couldn't read. My eyes would move over a sentence and I'd start it, but by the time I got to the end, I had no idea what was happening. The words in your mouth can sometimes feel like rocks that just won't go out. So you're busy trying to push them out from the inside and they just aren't coming, or they aren't going, or they're very hard to push, where your tongue moves differently and your mouth moves weirdly that you can't control. And it can be a very long way between the inside you that's doing the thoughts and the outside you that's actually speaking them.
David's involved in a new research project that's helping him rebuild his mind. Slowly, he can feel his memory being restored.
I think I am quite lucky to have come out of it with what I came out of it. You know, my brain still processes at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's increasingly got better. And I can talk and I can move, and, you know, I can sort of control my life in lots of ways. So, yeah, I feel I am very lucky to have come out of my stroke the way that I've come out of it.
If you can recognise the signs of a stroke as it's happening, you can minimise the damage. Scientists have developed a clot-busting drug, but it needs to be given within 4.5 hours of first seeing the symptoms.
Face, get the person to smile. One side doesn't move, that's a clue. Get them to lift their arms up. If one side drops away, that's a clue that someone's having a stroke. Get them to say something. If they can't get their words out or it's slurred, that's a clue that someone might be having a stroke.
Lee Wakefield was successfully given the clot-busting drug. Her clot could have killed her.
I just had such a bad headache, and my flatmate rang for an ambulance because she was really worried about me, and I remember telling her off because I thought she was overreacting. All I wanted was some Panadol. But apparently she gave me a Panadol and it was sitting on my lip. I couldn't actually feel it. And that's when she knew something was wrong.
We spend our lives discovering who we are, but what happens when the person you thought you were is no longer you?
I'm a police officer, I'm a detective in Auckland City. So what that means is I investigate serious crime that happens within Auckland City.
Physically, Lee looks well. She's even back at work. But psychologically, she's changed.
I felt like I had a personality change. It was like one day I wake up, had a stroke, and I'm not the same person. And it was really hard to get my head around the fact that my confidence, my ability, the things that I sort of do and like doing, I couldn't do. I thought it would be just, I'd be better and it was all over with, and all of a sudden I'd get my normal life back, and you don't. I guess I had never really considered depression a lot because, I mean, I've come across it a lot with my job and with other people, but I never thought I would be affected by it.
Applying the principles of a hardened detective, she buckled down and worked to recover her strength. But she was stumped by the way the stroke changed her emotionally.
People would just have to talk to me and I'd start crying, and it wouldn't even be anything that they'd said, it would just happen. And I found that very overwhelming and quite embarrassing. And I didn't want to go back to work until I could get that under control, because I didn't want to be at work and then all of a sudden be in tears and feeling like a basket case, because I just got really self-conscious about it.
She had always prided herself on being organised and in control. Her stroke was so unexpected, she's terrified it could happen again.
That really, really worried me at the beginning. I was so scared about that it might happen again and that I'd have to go through all of this again, and I just didn't know if I'd be able to cope with having it all happen again. I actually still don't know if I could, because I just don't, the thought of it happening again worries me, and every time I get a headache I get sort of a bit panicky. And I mean, there's a little bit of a difference between a headache and a migraine, and I felt like I had a migraine the day I had a stroke. I just get a bit worried when I do have headaches and things, and hope it's not happening again.
Mike Brown's stroke resulted in a paralysed left arm. He's frustrated that 18 months on, he still can't easily manage things like dressing himself.
Get it up and over your head. And the right arm in. There's always a bit of a twist there and there, but you get there in the end.
He's been doing as much physiotherapy as possible, and now he's part of a research project at Auckland University.
I made the decision that I was going to recover as best as I could and not stop recovering. A lot of people make that decision and give up. That's not me. Especially initially, your family help you a lot with what you're doing. That puts the extra pressure on them. And I think that's part of my determination, was I didn't want to be a burden on them at all, you know.
Neuroscientists are beginning to realise how much the brain can change and recover functions lost after a stroke. This New Zealand research is a world first. It's testing a way to change the stroke-affected brain.
I think it's been quite recently in the last few years that neuroscientists like us and others all around the world have realised actually the brain's capable of huge amounts of change throughout your life, even after big neurological injuries.
This device gives off a safe magnetic field. Kathy finds the small part of Mike's brain that controls his paralysed hand. When she finds it, she delivers a brief magnetic field, stimulating his brain to move his hand.
I don't feel anything at all in terms of it doesn't hurt or anything like that. The only thing that I do find is maybe the next day I'm quite tired.
Can I have the pen?
Now they've found those brain cells, they can begin the process of waking them up.
This is called priming, And this is a form of magnetic stimulation, so it's safe and painless and non-invasive. And what it does is it uses a very weak magnetic field to activate the cells near the top of the brain, and in this instance we'll use them to activate the part of the brain that controls Mike's left hand. So we increase their activity levels, let him sit quietly for a few minutes, and then he goes and does therapy with that hand to sort of capitalise on the way that the brain's been pre-activated. All right, so sitting nice and quiet and relaxed. Here we go. So when we do this, it takes a couple of minutes, and then we sit quietly for 5, and then Mike goes and does his therapy. And in the study we're currently running, we do this every day for 2 weeks to see if we can produce a good, long-lasting benefit.
The equipment isn't new technology, but it's the first time it's being used this way.
So this is an intermittent protocol. So it's on for 2 seconds, and then there's an 8-second gap. So for this protocol, it's important just to sit quietly, to let the effects in the brain settle, if you like, and then go and do the therapy. Yeah.
About there, so I can get it. So cool.
Okay, I'm going to time you. I want you to do it as quickly as you can.
All right. Okay.
And ready, set, go.
The brain cells needed to perform this task were the ones targeted by the magnetic stimulation.
Oops.
Mike's applying every bit of concentration. That helps stimulate the brain even more. His determination makes him an ideal candidate for the study.
Very nice.
Even this small achievement means everything to Mike.
Good job. Nice thumb.
His emotions have changed too.
I suppose the first thing that went through my mind was, you know, how's this going to affect me and my family? How's it going to affect me at work? You know, what are the long-term effects likely to be? Those sorts of things. Certainly you're not thinking about your recovery at that stage, you're thinking about what's happened, and then the blame starts, like, you know, could it be avoided? Those sorts of things, yeah. I was in a meeting at Middlemore Hospital with a group of engineers and architects and the client, and I fell over sideways in the middle of that meeting. And ended up knee-deep in about a space of about 5 minutes.
An artery burst in Mike's brain. When you look at the brains of people who died of a stroke, you can see the damage caused.
This is the stroke here. It's, you know, moderately big. This is due to a rupture of one of the small arteries that penetrate the brain to take blood into the brain. And what can happen is, if you're a smoker, high blood pressure, diabetes, you know, years and years of that can weaken the walls of the artery, and they can burst, give up the ghost, and you can get this big blood clot forming. It's like a big bruise in the brain, and what happens is it actually damages that, you know, to replace that underlying normal brain.
Scientists are excited by the discovery that parts of the brain might recover, more than they once imagined.
All right, Mike, so these are the pictures that we took in the MRI scanner before and after you did the therapy as part of the study. So this is basically just a picture of the outside of your brain, and your nose would be here, and that's the back of your head. This area here is in the primary motor cortex, and it's the part that specifically controls your left hand. Right. So this is what you looked like before you did the therapy, and this is what you looked like after the therapy. So keeping an eye on that spot, it's now in a different colour to show you it's afterwards, and it's much bigger and brighter. So this is a much more normal pattern of activity. And that tells us that after the therapy, you were controlling this left hand more normally and more efficiently, and with a lot more activation in the side of the brain that was affected by stroke. So whatever improvements you've experienced with the way this hand moves, it's not because your hand has changed,
Right.
it's because your brain has changed.
Which is great.
That's great. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve.
Well, the past 18 months is all about been all about recovery, really. When you're recovering quickly in the first 3 to 6 months, you think this is great, you know, you're going to get it all back. Your hand's going to work forever and all the rest of it, but it doesn't really. You get to a point when you realise that a disability is going to be with you for the rest of your life.
But having taken part in the study, Mike is encouraged. He's determined to continue to work hard. Researchers will continue to make new discoveries about the way a stroke impacts on the brain, but experts working in the field insist prevention is key. After all, 17 people will have a stroke in New Zealand today. 6 of them will die. But 14 of those strokes could be avoided.